in the conversations, it's always about furthering the kingdom. To be authentic, especially to be an authentic Christian, we have to be missional.
During our journey here at the Black American Experience in the Orthodox Church, for the past 2 seasons, we've heard incredible stories from the lives of individual men and women who have shared their thoughts and experience on becoming Orthodox Christians within the Black and Latino community. Today, we're taking a step away from that journey, and we're meeting with a couple, a husband and wife, parents, and faithful parishioners of St. John of Divine Greek Orthodox Church in Jacksonville, Florida. Lenoris and Amanique Triplett, who have been baptized, Micah and Agatha, are faithful members of a parish where my good friend and brother, Father Nicholas Lowe, is the pastor. I'd like to welcome Micah and Agatha to our show. Welcome.
Thank
Hello.
you.
How you doing, Father? Thank you for inviting us to interview, and glad to be here.
No, thank you so much. I've been excited and waiting for this opportunity to be with the two of you. So, Micah, as far as I've learned from you, you attended Gordon Conwell Seminary, a well-renowned Protestant seminary and institution, in preparation for ministry and service in the church. Can you please tell me how that education and formation affected your conversion into the Orthodox Church, and how did that experience guide you towards Orthodoxy? So, Micah, as far as I've learned from you, you attended Gordon Conwell Seminary, a well-renowned Protestant seminary and institution, in preparation for ministry and service in the church. Can you please tell me how that education and formation affected your conversion into the Orthodox Church, and how did that experience guide you towards Orthodoxy?
Yes, sir. Great question, because I can definitely say, outside of my upbringing within the Black church and my experience there, seminary was where I first got introduced to Orthodox literature or Orthodox theology. And so at the time, doing youth ministry and also going to seminary and working full time, that process of just being a seminarian was very cumbersome. So if you can imagine being married, also with kids, just two at the time, it got to a point to where, those papers are still due, and you still need to learn the information. You still need to read the pages, right? You had to require the number of pages you need to read while juggling full-time work as well as a family man. And so it came a point in my seminary journey where I kind of was getting burnt out, but at the same time, I'm immersed in theology and pastoral ministry and the readings of church history and things like that. So I'm taking it all in, but like drinking from a fire hose. All of it's coming in, not really having enough time to let it sit. And so around my second year in my master's program is where I had a chance to decide, okay, what was I going to sign up for next? And so because of the space that I was in spiritually, just feeling exhausted, I decided to lean in more so on the courses for spiritual formation. So that was where, in that piece, again, I had already had glimpses and summaries and snapshots of the early church fathers and the patristics and things like that in church history. So I was introduced to Orthodox thinking at that point as well, but just at a surface level. But when I started digging into spiritual formation, one, to benefit my own soul, as well as to learn how, if I was to step into full-time pastoral ministry post-seminary, how do you maintain that spiritual connection while you're learning all these things intellectually? And so it was beneficial for the time and space that I was in at that time, as well as how can I help other people as I minister to them. Again, I was doing youth ministry and discipleship, things like that. And again, you can't do spiritual formation or talk about spiritual formation genuinely without tapping into the Desert Fathers and the early church fathers. And I mean, one of the books, which is popular, right? It's not second to the Bible, but depending on who you speak with, it's right there as far as Christian reading. It's the Confessions of Saint Augustine, right? And how that book has changed a lot of people's lives. So even reading that, and I'm just like, okay, this is this guy in the early few centuries, and he's writing his life story, and I'm hearing this spiritual formation that took place in him, and this journey towards righteousness. And then you start to tap into some of the other writings, and it was at that point to where I was like, okay, the faith that these people had, even as especially in hardship, is reminiscent of what I'm familiar with within the Black church and civil rights and all these other different things, right? So it is I'm there and I'm being fed by hearing the coming up with a prayer rule, a rule of life, right? These are different practices, and then when you look at the origin of it, I'm saying that this is early church. This has always been there, right? There's this is it's this lineage of spiritual practices that have always existed within the church overall. Prior to, whether we want to say the Reformation or even prior to the Great Schism, these are things that were already there that you kind of tend to miss if you're not leaning into the church in its totality. If you think that there's
Right.
and if you're in your specific Christian confession or denomination, sometimes it's easy to just stay in that lane and not see what treasures the overall church and the church history overall has there to help you in situations that's not new under the sun. So again, tapping into those writers and again seeing, okay, what expression of Christianity were they a part of, and you start to see familiarity. You see Orthodoxy, Eastern Orthodoxy, Eastern Fathers, as well as some Catholic scholars, right? And then you kind of see, especially because again, this is prior to the schism in 1054. So again, it's no wonder that you see that being unified in that life of the church, being unified in the language of suffering and being persecuted for the faith and enduring, right? And so again, that was in seminary. So of course, writings and doing projects, and I took that into how I did ministry as far as discipleship with people. How do you live this Christian life? How do you make this practical? How do you take the principles that you see in the Bible, the Psalms and the Proverbs and Ecclesiastes? This is the same language that I saw in those writings of the early church fathers, the desert fathers, as well as later saints and fathers of the church. So again, in ministry, I latched hold of it and I didn't let go. But I was still in my Christian confession at the time of being a Baptist. I was in a Christian in Baptist church, and so take all of those things and apply it. Right? It doesn't
Right.
require time. It doesn't require me to shift and move. I
Mhm.
just grab it and apply it in my current context.
Mhm.
And so that was the first inkling of my familiarity with Orthodoxy, or that branch or that confession of Christianity, from again seeing that lineage from the very beginning and how it still existed to this day, even though it may not have been as familiar because I'm in a Western context in America.
Right. That is awesome. Dominique, while you saw Lenoris going through this experience, um, I had a similar experience attending St. Tikhon's of having to juggle family life and Lenoris, as you said, getting papers done and also leading a mission parish. Dominique, what was the experience like watching your husband go through this experience? A, and B, how did this affect your marriage? Was this experience enriching to your marriage? Were there any challenges in the transition? What was it like for you to experience all this?
The experience was interesting because in my wisdom, I decided that it was time for us to grow the family. And so our second son was actually born in the midst of him in seminary.
Okay.
And so being in seminary, going to school full time, both of us working full time, and we have a newborn infant, plus our 6-year-old. So it was challenging, but I understood. We had a conversation about him going back to school, what that would look like from a master's standpoint, the amount of work and the amount of time he wouldn't be there.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, well, our village is here in Florida, so we leaned on that village a lot. Even when I needed space to just be by myself, if we needed space to be by ourselves, we were afforded those opportunities. So when May 18th came, it was like, we're done. Graduation is here.
Right.
We all walked down the aisle. We all earned the diploma together. So
Mhm.
it was enlightening because he would come home and be like, "This is what I learned today," and I was like, "Okay." And I'm not as studious as he is. I feel like he's like a professional student, and I'm more of like, I'm here and then I finished and that's it.
Right.
So he's always teaching. He always would come home and say, did you know this? And did you know that? And I'd be like, well, no, or yes, I know this much of it. And he would take me the rest of the way. So there were a lot of great conversation pieces, a lot of great conversation starters. Um, and then just having that experience with him, with the kids, I would do it all over again. Maybe not the infant part, but I would do it all over again. I would wait until he graduated.
No, thank you. That actually segues into our next question. So having had this experience together, you're raising a family in seminary. Uh, how did the process of this experience transition not only into your conversion, but you're also working full time. You're now professionals. It's a common thing that I hear as a priest from my married couples and families that it's hard for them to attend divine services because, they have their jobs, they're raising children, they're trying to maintain their marriages, and it's a common experience among our younger brothers and sisters that are in Protestant confessions, but even in the Orthodox Church, to get caught up in our cultural mainstay of being, busy, busy, busy. I have this to do, I have that to do, and then Christ and His church becomes secondary to that experience. Could you please share with us how did you maintain that as husband and wife and as parents to make sure that Christ and His church was the centermost thing?
Yes, sir. And the motivation was honestly to do that. So I think it was
Mhm.
also timing, um, us coming into the journey, the full steam ahead, the journey of going into Orthodoxy happened when basically the world was on pause, right? This is around 2020. So, matter of fact, it was 2020. So we understand what was going on in 2020, not only a lot of with the pandemic, but a lot of social unrest.
Right.
And um, I was able, within ministry, doing ministry at that time, I was able to, not able, but the decision was to step away because at that time I was looking at potentially doing PhD work. So I wanted to start working on a thesis. I was doing some work with the seminary as far as the Institute of Study of Black Christian Experience. So that was an institute within the Gordon Conwell at the time where we were doing some things as far as the Black experience, as the Black Christian experience there. So stepped away from the not stepped away, but dialed back on some of the ministry obligations to do that. But then again, doing some preaching and things like that, and then the world kind of took a pause because of everything that was going on in 2020. Um, that allowed us not only to refocus and create different things to make sure that we were plugged in together and connected while we couldn't go out and worship. But it also gave us more time to fully explore and lean in onto, okay, what does worship look like for us now and beyond the lockdown?
Mhm.
What is it that we want to step back into? Because now at this time during the pandemic, we also had our third child. So in the crucible of seminary, we had our second one, and then in the crucible of the pandemic, we had our third. And so, but
We like a challenge.
yeah, we like challenges. But the again, the spiritual anguish that was going on just in general in 2020, and again, I don't want to just say it was pandemic because again, we understand a lot of what's going on in America just around the social unrest that was going on, even here in North Florida. And so thinking about what does this look like? We're not going to be in a space to where we're, well, we just do house church, right? Yes, I'm equipped
Right.
to preach, and I was already preaching and doing things like that. Yes, I'm equipped to do that, but what is it that is really important to us? We wanted to make sure that we did not forsake the assembly of the church, as it says in Hebrews, right? And
Mhm.
so, but then at that same time, we had to start asking important questions, especially even with me and my wife. It's like, okay, what does worship look like for you? What is it that you need to feel and understand that you're fully worshiping? Like, what is the essentials? And we always felt like our family had completely, not just me, but my wife had to be in a space where she felt at peace. The kids as well, where they're growing, right? So me again, I'm being able to pick up. I have the books, I have the commentaries, I have all of this different stuff. So I'm already there in my head, like, okay, I know where I want to go. I know what it looks like. I know I want to be in the apostolic faith. I understand how I view the Lord's Supper and communion. These are non-essentials for me. I understand what family worship should look like. We should be worshiping together. Something, and I'm looking at the different expressions, and there's certain expressions or confessions of Christianity that was doing that at the time in the practical sense again. And so I think that time period allowed us to step back in again because we had to be away and secluded for our own protection because of the virus. We were able to, once everything opened back up, now we can step into spaces that we were too busy to do before.
Right.
We were able to set things in place. Okay, we're not going to go back to just being busy for being busy, for the sake of being busy. We're going to prioritize family time, which we already did before, but even more so. What church is going to look like, it has to be a space to where we're worshiping together and not just me serving here. And when we're wrangling the kids, it had to be something intentional. And so visiting and viewing online, and again, that is all of those different things came in place to where we found ourselves at the doorsteps of St. John the Divine. And there's more gaps into that, but
Right.
to answer specifically about how we made time for each other. And even with work, also the things changed with work where both of us were able to work from home, right? So having that availability to telework gave us a lot of margin to schedule things as soon as we're done with work, right? We had a lot more flexibility. So the evenings look different for us now. We have more time to schedule things that were important to us. And we made sure that, again, the things that were important to us was having a strong, Christ-like environment and constant routines and rhythms to where we weren't being forced to pull away from the church, but we were leaning into our faith.
Thank God. I'm so happy to hear that. Monique, as you know now, being a part of St. John the Divine, and I know Father Nicholas has made a point for this in his work in ministry along with his presbytera, that mothers and wives have such an integral role in the local parish. Having gone through such an experience of transitioning from seminary to work life, getting through the pandemic, and now being settled in a local parish, what words of encouragement can you give to Black mothers, Latino mothers, and wives on where their place could be in ministry in the Orthodox Church, and to know that they have a place here in the Orthodox faith and tradition?
I would say, from my perspective and my experience, because what we were very adamant on was the next church that we become members of, we're not jumping in right away to ministry. We're going to sit back and be able to absorb the worship service, absorb and make relationships and, meet the people, really get to know them before we dove and started, thinning ourselves out a little bit. And so the advice I would give is do that. If you're coming in, sit and really get to know people. And just because you're a wife or a mom doesn't mean that you have to gravitate towards the ministry related to children.
Right.
If you're gravitated towards graphic design, then hey, can I help you do posters? Can I help you do the flyers or the Sunday pamphlets they hand out, or what events are coming up that I can help post on social media? It doesn't always have to. Moms get caught up in, oh, I have kids and I relate to other moms with kids. Sometimes you do, but then your passion is, painting, or your passion is construction. If they're deciding they want to expand the church, well, hey, I can put on a hard hat and pick up a hammer. Just not being stuck in the cliches of, oh, you're a mom, can you join the mom's ministry? If that is not your passion,
Right.
don't join a ministry if it's not your passion, because you're not going to honor God in that. You're not going to honor your family in that, and you're not going to be a good representative of a wife and mother in the church if you're in a ministry begrudgingly because you felt that, oh, well, this makes sense. Don't do it because it makes sense. Do it because it's something that you're passionate about. And then, I communicated that with Lenoris, and I said, I don't necessarily want to do mom's ministry, but if there's a need, I will step in. But these are the things that I'm really good at. These are the things that I want to do. And I expressed that to Father Nick. You know, he's very diligent about meeting new members, sitting down with them one-on-one, even if it's during a group luncheon at the church. He pulled me aside and we had our own separate meeting while everybody else was eating. You know, so being intentional about meeting with the clergy, meeting with the leaders of the church, and getting to know you, and then allowing them to introduce you to people that you would never come across. Like I'm in touch and I'm part of the Philopticos now. Now these are a group of senior women in the church that they don't necessarily fit my age demographic, but we have more in common than I thought. And so it's just sitting back, observing, and then figuring out what your passion is and how you can fit that into ministry in the church without being stereotyped into a specific space.
It's a perfect answer. Thank you. Lenoris, you are getting closer to my good friend and brother, Father Nick. When we first met, I was so encouraged by his missional mindset. I know that recently you became a co-catechist at St. John of Divine. Please share with our viewers so far, how much has Father Nick impacted your life when it comes to ministry, and the importance of that spiritual father and spiritual son relationship coming into the church and developing as a future leader?
Yes, sir. It's the, I mean, what can I not say about Father Nick? But even prior to me visiting, I was spectating online and found out prior to as well, which was intriguing, that he was also a graduate of Gordon Conwell. So that was the
Mhm.
first thing that piqued my interest was, oh, this is an Orthodox Christian who graduated with his doctoral degree from Gordon Conwell. And so that was again, so I was like, okay, cool. This is, it's interesting. And seeing him speak in his teaching, right? It hits home, it's practical, it's not something that is just teaching for teaching's sake, and I'm not trying to hit, it's piercing to the soul, and it gives you a call to action every Sunday, right?
It's
And so
incredible.
attending in person and then meeting him and having those, like my wife said, he's very intentional, especially with when he recognizes that you're a new person. And then even when you're no longer a new person and you're considered family, he still is an intentional, just as intentional as he was then. I don't know how he does that, right? But um in the conversations, it's always about furthering the kingdom. It's always about what can I do for you? How is your soul? Right? Those are questions that so it's like, do you really have time for me to sit here and unload? How is my soul
Right.
right now? Do I have the time to sit here and think and ponder what that is? Because it's not, even with him and what I've learned from him, and it was just something I was always intentional by itself, is that it's not ministry for ministry's sake, but it's ministry to bring more people into Christ likeness. And
Mhm.
so even with my seminary journey and what I've learned about spiritual formation, which is why it was it was like coming home when I realized that this is how the whole Orthodox faith is not engineered, but how the life cycle of it is, where everything is centered around making you into Christ likeness. So
Mhm.
even when you see with missionally, when you see people who are in spaces in their life where they're dealing with something, how can I help them realize God's love for them, and that God loved them so much that he sent his only begotten son, right? So that we could be made into his image, so that we can be Christ-like, and then we go and do that and spread that out to others. And so we love others to spread that love of God out. And so everything that we do is intentional towards that effort. So that's, and he's again, as a leader, he models that, and in his teachings, he models that, and in the endeavors that he does out is part of the parish, but even external to the parish, the places you will see him show up, the events that he's speaking at, and things like that. It's all for that sake, for that goal. Even to the marriage conferences and the renewing you book that he does, that him and his Presbyterian Rasen have, as well as the live with the lows. When you
Mhm.
see it, that's his mission. That's what he knows, what his goal is. He understands his purpose, and he lives that out. And to be authentic, especially to be an authentic Christian, and to to show your gratitude for the grace and mercy that the Lord Jesus Christ had bestowed upon us, we have to be missional. Because one thing that Father Nick says is that you will never meet a person on earth that the Lord doesn't love. You will never run into a person on earth that the Lord doesn't care about. So how do we live that out? And we're given that charge to live that out. And so in ministry with, now, sitting back for you, like my wife said, we wanted to just come and immerse and just be a part of the liturgy and take it all in and not be presumptive and thinking that, oh, I'm going to get in here, I'm going to do here, and I'll be great here. It's sitting back and waiting for that to be called out. And so Father Nick connected with me and was like, hey, look, it's time for you to get off the bench.
Thank God.
He was like, I understand what you're doing and I appreciate you being humble, but
Right.
listen, it's time for you to, we have work to do. And so as you mentioned, I'll be one of the co-catechists, right? As you said it, I'll be coming up soon, be teaching along with one of the other parishioners, the Orthodoxy 101, or what we call the new members journey, right? Or the catechism. Already have me plugged in, as well as learning some of the behind over there with the chanters and learning the Byzantine and how we're the reading of the church as well. Reading is not just getting up there and reading, but here's a script, go read it. It takes some discipline and it takes some intentionality, because if you don't believe the words that you're reading, why even bother read them? And we're talking
Exactly.
about scripture. We're reading scripture. We're reading hymns, reading songs. They're chanting it. So learning that, and as well as getting ready to learn some more about serving the altar. And so I'm blessed to just be in a parish where I wasn't forced into it. I wasn't singled out as, oh, okay, this person that has ministry experience, go do that. I was allowed to come in and just rest and be and just be content in that space. But then with his leadership, being able for him to identify that, hey, no, there's more that's bubbling up there, and this is where we need you to step into. So
I'm so happy to hear that you're going through this process now. I was so excited when I received the phone call from Father Nick, letting me know that you were moving forward in that process of developing as a leader in your in your local parish. Lenoris, Dominique, I have a final question that I think is very important to the furthering of urban missions and also to our viewers. We've spoken often about the importance of Black Orthodox clergy and laity alike coming together to work to further the importance of urban missions here in America, and especially within major cities. A dear friend of mine and somewhat of a spiritual son, Luther Menard, just moved into your area along with his wife. Have you guys met yet? And also, what do you think the two of you can do together, together as Lenoris, yourself, and Luther, and even Monique, what can you do with your husband and Luther and his wife about furthering the effort and the concern of urban missions within the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese?
yes, sir. So we have indeed met. Luther and his wife uh, both visited prior to them moving to the city. They actually visited to St. John's and some of the other Orthodox churches here, and we met then and exchanged numbers. We talked for quite a while after Divine Liturgy and connected from there. And he told me about their intentions on relocating. And as soon as they relocated, we tapped in. Um we've had dinner at each other's houses since then, since that time frame. And we've also Luther and I have also met up for lunch with a group of other guys as well between our parishes. And so we're building that relationship. I want to say is there. It's established, and we both have like-minded goals in the efforts of, like you said, urban missions and spreading that out. So conversations that we're having are definitely ongoing. We plan on we have some ideas. I don't want to throw all of them out there, but we have some ideas, especially with this not only your support, but support from Father Nick in that endeavor. That I've received from Father Nick in that endeavor, that is something that he desires. And so Luther and I are in conversations, and we're going to be locked at the hip in regards to that with our families. And we both belong to different parishes different parishes which I think is very beneficial because representation matters in multiple spaces. So no matter if we
Absolutely.
have people coming to St. John's or they're going to St. Justin's, you will
Mhm.
see someone there. And again, the way we are, we go up and we walk up and speak to people, right? And we see a new face, the same thing out, that was done to us. We make sure we speak and welcome them in there. And it's been tremendous since then because that's how I met Luther. He was new, he
Right.
was a new face. What brings you here, man? What's going on? Right.
Mhm.
And so what that looks like is, again, having a presence not only in the community, and we both have presence in our own spaces, but being more intentional on establishing a place to where people can actually come, and people who are actually inquiring, they can come, whether that's throughout the week or as they come and visit on to divine liturgies. What would that look like after that? How do we continue to tap in and communicate with them and have them and be a resource to those individuals? And then how do we become a mainstay not only in the communities around our church, but in other sides over the city, and continuing to build that up, because we come across, Luther and I have both come across people who are definitely interested in plugging in and trying to figure out what's the next steps and what's going on and where can I learn more, and we'll pass out information for them, and we just want to be here to continue to walk alongside them in this journey.
Thank God. I'm so happy to have finally had the two of you to be a part of our journey here at the Black American Experience in the Orthodox Church. To our viewers, please continue to pray for Lenoris and Dominique and their family as they continue to grow as an established pillar at St. John of Divine Greek Orthodox Church in Jacksonville, Florida. If you're in the Jacksonville, Florida area, please do not hesitate to visit St. John of Divine. And again, we look forward to seeing you again in the future.